In a world filled with challenges and opportunities, it's not just about having big dreams, it's about having the right approach to turn those dreams into reality. Whether you're navigating the competitive landscape of business or seeking personal growth, it's all about the approach.
And welcome everybody to the latest episode of The Approach. I'm glad all the people have tuned in and watching us right now. The whole concept of The Approach, it goes back to my time as an interrogator, and everything about our job was about the approach that we did. And I've carried that same concept all the way into my personal life and business. And now I want people to be able to come on here and be able to share their approaches that are unique to their industries and how they approach leadership and problem solving. So I'm going to bring on my co-host. My co-host is Asha Mankowska. And she has been recognized by Forbes Magazine as one of the top business mentors with over 17 years of experience. So everybody welcome Asha to the stage. It looks like Asha may be having some technical difficulties. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on our guests for today. Our first guest is Kian Frith.
Hey.
How are you doing, Kian?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much. Great to be on the show again.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, my name's Kian Frith. I'm the CEO of KD Impact Consulting, and we are fractional CFO consultants, bookkeepers, and cyber risk specialists. I'm also a business coach, business consultant, and love working with small and medium-sized businesses to turn them around, help them grow, find profitability, and ultimately to enable them to thrive and enable the business owners to realize their dreams. So I'm, as you can tell, I'm an Englishman, and I'm living in the beautiful city of San Antonio, Texas.
Well, welcome to Texas.
Thank you so much.
All right.
God's own country.
Oh, yeah. It's beautiful country down there. Great food.
Oh, yes.
All right. Up next, I have Christopher Salem. Welcome to the stage, Chris.
Hey, Dr. Davis and Kian, how you doing?
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a business acceleration strategist and a professional keynote speaker. I work with small business owners up to mid-sized companies, including the leaders themselves, and helping them to craft valuable or compelling and valuable value propositions that will help them to establish a foundation to increase revenue and profit when they can properly speak to the in this case, the challenges that their audience has that could be better, the results they seek and don't have. And then when coupled with the right lead gen, sales strategies, as well as revenue and profit strategies, they can significantly grow their business to a whole new level and increase their business valuation.
That's great. That's awesome. Do you have a particular region that you work out of?
I'm in the Northeast, but I'm agnostic. This applies to just about any business. This can apply to any business in any industry. It could apply to a dentist, a doctor, CPA firm, law firm. As long as they got a P&L, it works.
Mm-hmm. All right. Sounds good. It looks like Asha has fixed her technical issues, so let's bring her on. Welcome back to the show, Asha.
Hi everyone. There is always something happening, something unexpected, right?
Yeah. If it wasn't for technical issues, then Asha, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
and Asha, I promised you it's gonna be fun, so here it is, right? I just heard you guys, Davis. So let's welcome Asha. Kicked you out from the stage.
Yeah. So I went ahead and introduced your guests in the meantime while you were getting your technical issues, corrected. So go ahead and tell everybody about who you are and what you do.
Hello, everyone. And right now I can actually hear everyone in a fantastic way. So that's a good thing. I'm your absolutely favorite business executive, consultant, trainer, and corporate sales trainer. So my clients definitely scale and maximize their profitability, performance, and sales, obviously. I have a pleasure to work with my corporate clients and with smaller business as well, all around the world. Obviously in US, mostly San Diego, but Texas recently. So many people from Texas. I don't know. I think I might be moving there. Would you like to say something, Kian?
There's no room.
We're
Right.
full.
Well, yeah.
Borders closed.
Like if I would try to cross,
Texas
that
is
would be
too
my
big for us.
If you're coming from California, you have to get a specific visa to get over here. So
Too right. Yeah.
Oh my God! By the way, I've heard that so many people are moving out from California because it's been so extremely expensive, especially San Diego, that California supposedly is taxing people on moving out. You know, like penalty. You want to move out, you will be taxed. So.
yeah. I had heard about a proposal that they
Incredible.
were trying to push through that anybody that moved out of the state of California, that they were subject to a California tax for 10 years. Of course, I don't know if that where that went, but
that sounds unconstitutional.
yeah, that's what
I like the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I have some volunteers moving to California right now, right here.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So back to us. What else I do? As you can tell, I speak at international conferences, national conferences, local conferences. Besides Texas, obviously, since I have border patrols, Kian, trying to keep me out. You will see. I'll be there tomorrow.
The British are now patrolling your borders.
Yeah. Wow. See, nice. Guys, we really upgraded. I just don't know which way. So I just would like to welcome everyone. I think we're missing one especially amazing person that's supposed to be here today, but she got called to have a masterclass. So maybe next time we will keep it secret who that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Christopher, you know this person as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So I'm sure
really
you're
amazing.
Yes, it was so much fun the last time. So no pressure, guys, but I'm really hoping we will rock and roll this episode for Davis. Listen, everything is for Davis, okay? Nothing for us here.
Hey, I'm doing this for everybody else.
Right, and see that's exactly how leadership is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
That's
Definitely.
why it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Well, win, not so much.
Yeah. So what I would like to do is everybody kind of go around the table and we talk about approaches, and so we've all got similar things that some of us kind of cross over a little bit as far as the topics that we cover and the people that we talk to and who our clients are. But I want you to talk about something that you feel like is a unique approach that you have to take that may be a little different than what people in other industries would have to take as far as their business. So Asha, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Davis. Always a gentleman. Kian already knew who I'm thinking of. This is amazing. All right. So, you know what? Over 20 plus years, I think, when we grow as leaders and business owners, I think also our sophistication will grow while working with our clients. And it's not really depends on us, but it depends what we notice that our client needs the most. So, for instance, when I was working on their performance, profitability, revenue growth, and sales, obviously, and so on, I noticed that a very important factor I can implement was a neuroscience, believe it or not. So it is a neuro leadership where it's like a science and an art, right? To become a leader, to grow your business, to scale your business in a way that it's a healthy way. You have a buy-in from not only your executives, but also from your team members, and in the end, from your clientele, right? So I believe my unique approach definitely is focused on culture of corporation or your business, focused on what type of ideal client do you really want to serve, where do you find them, how do you deliver, and how do you take care of your clients. So, and that has everything to do with the neuro leadership. How do we communicate? Are we really clear what our message is? What do we offer to our clients? How would they benefit? And why my clients should choose us, or why their clients should choose their company to work with. Mm-hmm. So I believe that's the unique approach that will skyrocket always their profitability, but also what's very important, will get everyone on board, right? So I have a great question, by the way, later on that will go along with that for all of you guys, but I'll keep it, for later on. So I think that's where I stop for now.
Awesome. Chris, you want to share from your aspect?
Sure. I'll share for two areas what I do is I always start first with a foundation, because with that, I look at success in anything has 4 pillars. You have to have a foundation, just like a beautiful house is built on a foundation. If it's a faulty foundation, it can look really good from the outside, but it's going to have problems, or worse yet, it'll come crumbling down. So it's got to start with emotional intelligence that Asha had, talked about the neuroscience in how we think. And how we think is going to change the dynamics of how we work together to now create a valuable experience with the clients we serve. So it starts at the individual level, the team level, then the organizational level. And how we think from intentions in the moment rather than expectations tied to outcome puts us more in control of the control we can, and then less of what we can't control. So what we can control each and every day is our communication to ourselves, our behavior, our attitude, it's happening for you, not to you, our emotions, meaning that we learn to respond versus react to situations and other people, and our action. We cannot control those same 5 things in other people or situations. Most people operate from expectations, meaning that most of our energy is focused on the control we can't control. Thus, we're reacting and just kind of going through the motions. But if we can learn now to be proactive, to operate from intentions, it's a game changer in what it can do in taking your business to a whole new level and creating better experiences, starting internally with your workforce and then outward to your customer. Next, I would say that most businesses think they know their audience, but 9 out of 10 times when an assessment's done, when I have done this, I found that not to be the case. They just assume and speculate what their audience is looking for. They don't really know exactly what that challenge is that could be better, the results they seek they don't have. And anytime that you're applying lead gen or any sales strategies on top of that, it's not normally going to do as well as you would like it to, because the message isn't in alignment to that pain point. There's a buyer's journey. People do not like to be sold, but they like to buy. And if we can align the message across the different touch points, social media, it could be paid advertising, email marketing, it could be speaking at a conference. I speak all the time, and I generate a lot of business that way. Podcasts, posting on social media through posts. when it's subconsciously speaking to that challenge that could be better, to the results they seek they don't have, you expedite or reduce the number of touch points to now for somebody to say, yes, I think I'm looking for some help in this area. Maybe perhaps you can help me. So these are the things that I don't have to sell. I just enroll people in the business. And these are the things that I've been able to do successfully in teaching organizations, whether even if they're not technically sales oriented, it could apply to anything, any business, even a dental office when they're talking to a patient about upgrading them to treatment, and the patient's going, well, I don't have any pain in my mouth, doctor, so I'm going to bypass the treatment. Well, if you wait 6 more months, it's going to be worse and it's going to cost you more money. Meanwhile, why the patient isn't accepting the treatment is because the doctor has not gotten to the true challenge, what's most important that can be better, and the results they seek they don't have. They know how to do that. They can learn a way now where that patient will accept the treatment now. Thus, that will increase revenue and higher collections in their practice. So there's an art to it. It's just learning the process, but it's a foundation. And again, those 4 pillars of success are foundation, mindset, emotional intelligence. Number 2 is preparation, making sure we're focused on the priorities that matter, delegating anything that's important and urgent that can be delegated, getting rid of the things that are not relevant to what's important to anything that we're working on. And there's so much to share, but I'm trying to go fast through it. Then we have to execute and then finally measure to see what works, what doesn't, and then adapt and then repeat the process.
Well, as the other folks on this panel will tell you, we're not restricted by time. So
I just wanted to be respectful. That's all.
No, that's good.
I'm happy to elaborate.
Yeah, no, those are great points. Thank you. All right, Kian, you're up next.
So for me, the approach that I take is, and this has been learned the hard way, is listening is my number one. So when I'm engaging with anybody, and when that business is engaging with me, when an executive is engaging with me, I like to listen. I do like to ask probing questions, probably not as probing as you would, Davis, from your former life. But I like to ask the questions because I want to see the response literally in the body language. And I like to hear what they're saying as well. This is very crucial for me because I want to get an understanding of where that person's at and where they think their business is at. My approach then also is maybe slightly unique is I'm starting to gather information. I want to see documents. I want to see papers. I want to see strategies. I want to see vision statements. And the reason being is I want to understand maturity of the people that I'm working with. I want to understand exactly where they're at and then see how that correlates to what I've listened to from their responses, from the questions that I've asked them. Then I've got a platform. I've got a starting position to understand what we're actually working with. So cutting through all the kind of like the sales talk, if you're at a networking event, oh yes, my business is doing fine, but I need a little bit of help here and I need maybe a little bit of help there. When you start to ask the questions and the probing questions and maybe the difficult questions, and you're seeing the reaction and you're seeing the body language, which is uncomfortable, you start to uncover aspects which have, okay, I'm going to note that. And being a numbers guy, I know I may be here in Texas. I'm a UK qualified accountant, have been for over 20 years. I'm listening for the pain points which are going to affect the numbers at all times. So that's from my perspective. Yeah. Listening and evidence.
Yeah. You brought up the point of pain points, and that's actually my approach. I'm very, very direct and very specific about, this.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
That's not the right answer. Back under the water again.
When I do discovery calls, that's my first question. What are your pain points? What are the issues that because I want to see from their perspective, what they think the problems are. Because you may go into that company and their perspective of what the problem is may not actually be what the problem is when we look at it from our perspective. And so, but that's kind of the foot in the doors, because I want them to know that this is about them, not about me. I'm here to help. And so that generally that's just my approach to it. And then, we go through, we identify what those pain points are, and then start coming up with solutions. I've got ideas in my head of what the solutions are, but I want to guide them in the process, keep them involved in the process, and not necessarily it be a one-sided conversation. I want them engaged with it. It's kind of like, raising kids. If you don't, you can tell them something all day long, but if you don't take them by the hand and say, all right, this is how you do this, and develop a partnership there, it's not going to click. So, that's my general approach, when I work with folks. So now
that's if I may, just to summarize, we all touch bases about the ability to listen and emotional intelligence, which is absolutely important in a leadership. And if we want to ever, that's neuro leadership, that's exactly where we stand. Because if we as mentors, as consultants, cannot be the one that will be the role model, right? Don't do how I say, do how I will show you, and I will guide you. So that it will be way more successful than anything else. And what Davis said about the pain points, that's why the ability to listen well and the clear communication is so crucial and important, because only then we can really figure it out, what is going on within the company, what the real pain points. Like Davis said, the pain points might not be the ones that they think they are, or the problems that they think they have, right? So the effective decision making in the end, for them or for us in the first place, it really depends on having and exuding those skills, and working on those all the time.
So
I always find that, and you all make great points, because listening, we have 2 ears and one mouth, and when we can ask questions where we can disguise the impact, because we're here to share, not tell. And people, regardless of their personality type, if they're task-oriented, people-oriented, asking certain questions a certain way, like how we start off, is really important. How I ask a question to a type A personality will be slightly different than how I do it to a high I person who is people-oriented. So again, tapping into that, like what really drives them. So when we can have a little bit of idea of that and drilling down, they're giving you more information, you're building that engagement, and now they're more likely to disclose more to what that challenge is. And can that now, when that rapport has been built, will they be open for a recommendation, an idea, a suggestion? And that now you're asking them, and in this case, they're going to say yes or no. And if they say yes, they're more likely going to accept an opportunity, perhaps now, to work with you, that you can help them. So I always find that what Keon mentioned earlier, and all of you have elaborated, listening is so important, especially in the fact-finding process or the discovery process of getting that information. And because communication, unfortunately, in this world is based on assumptions and speculation. And we think people understand what we say, and that's not, even if they go like this, doesn't mean they understand. That just means they heard you. That's it. So you have to be able to be as the sender or the receiver of the communication. In a perfect world, both would be responsible, but we can't control other people. So you are always responsible for that specific, clear, and concise communication, being assertive, not being passive or aggressive in our styles of communication.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I learned. For a while, I was a high school teacher and a coach, and one of the first things that caught my attention is I could get up in front of the class and I could say one thing, and I'm going to get multiple interpretations of what it was that I said, even though in my mind, all I did was give you a state of fact, or something that was out of the textbook, but all of a sudden I've got all these, interpretations of what I said. And what I come to realize is that people hear things not necessarily as they are, they hear things as they are. We all operate off of filters. We have filters that, based off of our personality types, things that have shaped who we are as far as our experiences are concerned. And then that's going to affect how we take information in. You get certain people that are triggered by a specific word because they've had something associated with that word in the past that possibly caused them some trauma, pain, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But that particular word, for whatever reason, just, seems to trigger them.
It was a trigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say, and great point, Davis, and I'd love to hear from everybody else. We all have, as people, we all have opinions and different perspectives on things. Again, we can't control somebody else's communication, how they look at things.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've learned to do, and I teach this to business leaders, is even though you have your own opinion, you can see things for, how you would like it to be. Mm-hmm. If you approach it that way, you're less likely now to see it from another person's point of view. Just to your point, you could say a fact and somebody could say through, you have a different perception or perspective on it from many different angles. So when it comes to problem solving and challenges, it's not about who's right, who's wrong. It's about what, look at the situation for what it is, not just what you think it should be. And I've learned that when we can approach it that way, we can be more open, even though it may not be your idea, you may not even agree with it, but knowing that collectively everyone feels that's what's best to address that situation, looking at things for what it is, not what we think it should be. It kind of opens up our mind for new ideas and new ways of getting things done.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, Chris, you threw out the term outcomes earlier. And so I had a question.
One more important thing, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chris also mentioned about sometimes even people when you think they listen to you, they just heard you, right? Mm-hmm. But it's so important. Are you guys seeing me okay, by the way? I think I lost you for a second.
You're good.
We can hear you.
I can hear you fine.
Fantastic. All right. So I think it's very important that whatever opinion they share or their statements, we do acknowledge that we are hearing them too. It's very important because people need to be heard in order to open up, to feel that they matter, that they are significant, and we are taking their opinion, experience under consideration. I think that communication, especially this nonverbal, because as we know, 80% or more, I believe, 90-something is unverbal versus what we actually say. Yeah. So it's so important to, even someone has a dialogue or shares an opinion, to actually show that I do hear you, I acknowledge you. And then we can specify, do I hear you that you said this, or this, right? So that's the clear communication and ability to listen it will make decision-making so effective in a longer sense.
Yeah. You brought that up as far as, there was a technique that we learned. It was called mirroring. And so when somebody would say something, just to make sure that, we had what they said straight and correct and keep them on track, what I hear you saying is, and then repeat it back to them. That kind of, and that helps with the clarity of communication, making sure that, there's clarity there. So, Chris, you threw out the word outcome. So I'm going to throw a question out there, and I know the response I'm going to see on your faces when I ask this question, and I'm looking forward to the responses to it. How many of your clients do you have to, one of the first things that you have to do is to get them to dissociate and emotionally detach from the outcome?
It's often a very difficult task because it's something we've been conditioned by, how we grew up and media, everything is attached to outcomes. But the reality is when you look at any kind of goal accomplishment, there's going to be things that you can control and many things that you can't, because oftentimes there'll be other people involved. There'll be situations involved that we have no control. And when, let's say, for instance, we have a deadline. So let's say it's due next Friday. And now what is going to happen when now you got this important project, you got to get it done by Friday. The first thing the mind does is, like, it says, I got to get it done. I got to get this thing done. And you start to like visualize, how am I going to get it all done right now? And so your mind now goes into the past and the future. It raises that stress. It raises the cortisol. You begin to get anxious. You might get a little frustrated. You might feel overwhelmed. But by doing that, what's happening is that you're putting that energy into the control you can't control. You're attaching to that outcome. Think of it like a puzzle. If that puzzle was 100 pieces to complete the puzzle, it's like you're attaching yourself to all those pieces to complete the puzzle, but you don't have all the pieces. You only have 12 pieces. So now it's training the mind. How can I focus on the 12 pieces? What can I do right now? How can I prioritize with what I have within my control and work that to the best I possibly can? Delegate wherever I can. Again, and making sure I'm focused on those priorities. They're going to keep moving me towards more puzzle pieces than to complete it. So it's chunking it down, being more specific, measurable, attainable, achievable, relevant, time, the SMART goals that a lot of people probably talk about. Doesn't mean you have to use that SMART process, but nonetheless, it's chunking things down to what you can control, and letting and trusting the process of what you can control will lead to those results, because you can only control what you can control.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for people to do. But when you can get into that frame of thinking over time through some discipline and consistency with certain daily habits, it changes your whole outlook. Like I used to be the king reactor and king, I had so much anxiety and stress because I was always attached to the outcome. But when I learned how to do this and shift over 3 years to make that change, how I approached tasks and important priorities, I don't get stressed out. Like I used to. I used to get anxiety attacks about it.
Yeah.
And this was many years ago, but it just changes the whole energy flow. And I don't know, and if you can now get other people to do it for themselves through your example and resourcefulness, not saying it's easy. Those are the teams that win. Look at a football team like that. They might be down by a certain number of points, but they're calm and they're coming together. They're not getting caught up in screaming and yelling at each other. They're pointing the finger. They're just focusing on what they can do in that moment within their control to win the game. And I find that those are the teams, the people in the teams long term that win on a sustainable level.
I like that. You talked about the chunks. And when I heard Davis ask the question, I heard two words: river crossing. And this is the analogy that I use all the time with my clients, because they get to a point at times where they're overwhelmed by outcomes. They feel nervous. We feel nervous, and we struggle with the outcome. We struggle with where we're trying to get to. Yeah. And I like river crossing because I like breaking it down into the bite-sized chunks, the stepping stones. Let's just go one stepping stone at a time. And invariably, an effective route of stepping stones is they're not too far apart and they're not too close. They're just right. And it's manageable. So you can break it down into the manageable chunks, and everyone goes on that journey and they get to the other side and they reach the desired outcome in that very kind of manageable stepping stone way.
I like how you just said about the rocks, that they're just far enough. It's stretching us, not straining, but not easy. I love that analogy you used there.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I love what you guys said, seriously, because the detachment, I think, in my life, since I'm exactly like Chris, I am so result oriented and so focused on results for my clients and for myself, either in my work life or my private life. So I realized I have to learn detachment first before I will expect that from my client. I cannot teach something I have not achieved by myself. So, it's really sometimes difficult for the clients or us, even for people to comprehend the difference because I am attached to my goal. Don't get me wrong. I am attached to my process, but I am detached from the outcome because the control aspect, what Chris was talking about, it's so important. We think we know what will be best for us. If we let go of that control, if we detach from the outcome, I always say, I want to achieve this or this, what's in my goals that I am committed to achieve, but also maybe something better as well. So when we remove the need for control, we will allow also the universe, whatever we want to talk about, to deliver to us opportunities, deliver to us solutions, the smaller size bites that we can really measure and we can take without overworking, anxiety, stress, because that's literally what will kill sometimes our results. If we are making decisions from the stressed, stuck mind, because we are so focused and so trying to achieve it so badly. And the other thing that no one is talking about is when we are so attached to the outcome. I had to deal with that too. People don't enjoy the journey, and the journey will offer so many opportunities and new solutions if we willing to listen and to allow this to happen for us.
And I know that's a difficult. Would you say it's more difficult dealing with somebody that's, quote unquote, self-employed versus somebody that has established themselves within more of a bigger business type? Because I would think that from a self-employment standpoint, especially when you first get into business, your biggest concern is I got to get bills paid. I got to get, there's all this talk back here that you have to fight through to be able to focus on getting the results of the process that you're trying to establish within your business. So what are your thoughts on that?
Kian, if you want to go, I can go next. It's up to you.
Well, just briefly on that one, that's a really interesting question. Now, from my experience, you get some self-employed who really struggle, and you get some self-employed who are coachable. You get some self-employed who are willing to listen to new ideas, and they're just starting out. They're maybe entrepreneurial spirit. And they just want to grow. So they're just soaking up information. They're happy to get it from as many sources as possible. There are others who are just tunnel visioned. And their way is the only way. And actually listening to anything else that's out there beyond that tunnel is extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. But that is exactly the same in some medium-sized businesses and larger. I've worked in all sorts of size businesses. And I've seen this regardless of the size, where some are tunnel visioned. I am the MD, my way is or the highway, and there's no other aspect. Yet there's other MDs who have been incredible, and they're willing to have the people who are better than them around them. They're willing to listen to new ideas and bring things in for the betterment of the business. I don't see, and particularly from my perspective, I don't see a real difference between whether you're self-employed or you're leading a medium business. But yeah,
I agree, because I mean, there's different personality types. Just to Kian's point, some people could just be it's my way or the highway. I mean, I can understand a business owner first starting out and they're doing everything, right? They're the cook, the bottle washer, they're doing multiple things.
Boy. Yeah.
And the stress can be overwhelming. They're trying to make money and they're barely, they're living on savings. and there's a lot of balls up in the air, and they don't have the right systems and processes at that point to help them. But with that being said, it's all part of the process nonetheless. So, but yeah, I would say that it really varies. I've worked with some managers or people working for companies, and where they just have their role and duties, and that's their responsibility. And even then, they've been tough to change, and so on. So I think it's on a case by case basis, but nonetheless, it's got to be something that people have to recognize that they have to work towards, because it's like with anything. If you're a business owner, yes, you might have to handle multiple roles in the beginning to do the things to at least get the revenue coming, get the ball off, get the ball moving, then start implementing people, processes, systems. Because the reality is, if you don't learn to delegate sooner than later when it's applicable, your business will never get to that next level.
So you touched on something there, Chris, about the lack of systems. And this is something I see all the time with the small business owners. And so they are doing absolutely everything because they have put no systems or processes in place. And so it's all with them, and they're utterly overwhelmed. And when you go and start having a conversation with those type of people, you go, hey, let's break this down. How about? I get so frustrated with the number of small businesses with that lack of systems, and it's not good leadership. So I'm trying to encourage these business owners to show good leadership by putting these things in place. So as they grow, it doesn't become a humongous problem where they've then got to bring in big systems, and it's going to cost them even more money. And to understand the logic of doing things early on as good leadership. I apologize for the segue, but it's a subject close to my heart, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can tell.
I'm sorry.
You know what? Just to answer very quickly your question, Davis. I'm sure you guys remember we talked last time. Also, we mentioned Robert Kiyosaki book, the cash flow quadrant, right? Where we had the employees, the self proprietor, and then the business, and an investor. Obviously, everyone wants to be in a business section and the investor section. But what that requires is exactly what we're talking about. If we will allow ourselves to let go of control and put in place systems and processes, all the KPIs for our teams, and hire really people that are better than us to implement, that's exactly how we can grow and scale anything we touch. Versus when we're trying to do everything at the same time and be overwhelmed, stressed out, and we are not able to either manage our stress, anxiety, the company, or the growth. Because when we grow, at certain point, we will hit certain capacity. And if we don't have enough people, if we don't have enough sources to implement, then we're not going to be able to grow.
Mm-hmm. I've been that small business owner that, that had to do everything. And it's definitely a growth process. And, it's just like anything else. There's a process to it. And sometimes we don't always know the extent of where the process is going to be able to grow through a situation. But, I could definitely tell you my first business that, was when I went out and practiced right out of chiropractic school, and started my first practice, and I was doing everything. And you talk about levels of stress, and then you have bills to pay, because medical equipment is never cheap. So you have to get enough money to pay those and do all that. So let's kind of go into our I have my classic 3 questions. We've been addressing the first one. My next one is what's your take on approach to leadership in general?
I would say with leadership, it always has to start with you. managing people doesn't work. Managing systems and processes does. The reality is nobody likes to be told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, even though some people, require direction, no doubt about it. But when it's really all said and done, how we lead ourselves it provides a bigger impact through our communication, our behavior, our attitude, our emotions, and how we respond versus react to situations, and attitude and how we look at things happening for us, not to us as the victim. And then our level of action. That speaks louder than anything when people could observe that in you, and you have more of an impact and influence over them through your example, in this case, your daily example, and your resourcefulness. You're empowering them to self-lead themselves in their role and duties, not only on the job or, if it's a alliance partner, or even if it's in your personal life, if it's your spouse or your children or your family members, people in your community, whatever, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It's that, knowing how to lead yourself and be the example and resource of that, again, through the things that we can control, your communication in an assertive versus a passive aggressive way, our behavior in an assertive versus a passive aggressive way, or both, our attitude, it's happening for you, not to you, seeing those challenges as opportunities and ways to grow, and now turning them into results. And then our emotions and how we respond versus react to difficult situations and people, and then our action. And I find that when you can serve yourself, fill your cup, you are able to spill onto others in a positive way to empower them to do the same. Does that mean that it happens to everybody? No. But if you can influence them to be, step up in their role and duties through your example and resourcefulness, well, that's moving things forward. There are going to be some people that will never get it, and that's just reality. But you're not going to bat 1,000. But if we can raise our batting percentage from 300 to 600, well, we're heading in the right direction. So for me, it's all about, we have to fill, just like the oxygen mask on a plane. They tell you have to put it on yourself before you put it on your child. Most women and even men will put it on their child first before they put it on themselves. You got to fill your cup in order to spill onto others. I'm just a big proponent of, when we can do that, we can really truly give without expectation, not from pleasing and enabling others, but from empathy and kindness to empower them through, again, the example of resourcefulness to do for themselves. That's what builds a winning team. That's what creates a better customer experience. And when it comes back from somewhere else, you receive it without resistance, as long as it serves you to, again, fill up the cup to then put it back out, to keep giving without expectation. Yep. Having boundaries, of course, and then so forth. So that's my take on leadership.
I like it. I can imagine that actually between all of us, we're going to have a different view on this. Mine's slightly different. And I think maybe this is shaped by my own personal personality as being a leader. I see them visionaries, people who can see outside the box, people who can see a bigger picture. And at the same time are prepared to continually learn, that they're not leading going, that's it, I know everything now and you're going to do it my way because I'm the leader. But there's that continual learning that goes with it of going, okay, is there newer ideas? Is there new approaches? What can I learn from this industry? What can I learn from that person, from that book, that podcast? And I love that. And so you really got that visionary with that continual learning aspect. And then there's true values. And I see that being very important in leadership. There's those values, the integrity, empathy, honesty, trust, reliability. I see the value proposition within a leader being very, very important. It was interesting as I was just thinking about it, also as Crystal was speaking, Steve Jobs came into my mind. And I'm thinking, he was a leader. Now, was he an effective leader? He was a visionary. He was constantly trying to push the boundaries on learning. Was he really a good leader, though? I mean, he was having fits of anger, and maybe his values weren't the best, but he was inspiring. People loved to work with him. He was pushing the boundaries constantly. And it's very interesting, you know. So I wonder, would we class him as a good leader? He was a leader, but was he a good leader, a bad leader, indifferent? And so we're coming up with different ideas here of leadership, and perhaps there's, you know, elements of what each of us is going to say here that need to kind of come together to be a really effective leader. Just thoughts of a simple Cornishman.
Great. You know, guys, I think
Stunned silence. Thanks for that.
I thought somebody else was going to elaborate. I think you were there.
Yeah.
I love what you said about values, because values are, whether if we know it or not, like it or not, we are connecting on values. And you know, it doesn't mean we have to have the same values verbatim, but we can connect on shared values. And that doesn't mean you always have to like everybody personally, but we could still connect on those values in some way that we can communicate better in that case.
Yeah. I mean, I think every organization should have a set of core values. As a person, you should have a set of core values. I mean, and those core values is what dictates your decision making. Because if the decision doesn't lie within the boundaries of those core values that have been set, you don't do it. For me, it's fairly simple.
And then tied to that is actually being able to effectively communicate. So that actually, if you don't have shared core values, shared values, that you can effectively communicate to that to whichever party you're having to do so. And you don't shoot them down, but you can show empathy to communicate effectively. I'm not sure if Asha's agreeing here. I'm getting concerned because she's got that kind of lawyer look.
Yeah. She's like, how can
I stopped saying something, but no one could hear me. So you guys were so amazed by all the dialogues. Can you hear me okay right now?
Yeah,
we can.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. So I really like your insights on leadership. Actually, my question was getting even deeper than the one that Davis asked, because, you know, I noticed that the name of a leader or manager or the role and responsibilities are really becoming
I think we had some technical issues.
Yeah,
so
caught up.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger time.
Oh, we lost her altogether. She'll pop back up here in a second.
Do they not have good technology in Seattle or San Diego?
Yeah, apparently there's a technical vortex in San Diego.
People from Texas just some internet, and that's what's happening right now. All right, so back to the important things I was saying. You know, I've noticed that the words leader and manager and roles and responsibilities are really introduced in a very interchangeable way, and they're being very mistaken, put all into the one place, basically. And there is no more strict differences in between what does it mean being a leader and what does it mean being a manager. I know it's more straightforward, possibly in the bigger companies, in the corporations. But I want to ask you, what does it mean to you being a leader? And what's the difference between being a manager, as best as you can?
I think it's about the level of influence. You know, leaders are able to influence. Managers, they're just doing a job. That's always been kind of my definition between the two, differentiating between the two. And influence can be both good and bad. But the idea that I think that all of us have is let's figure out what the leadership level is, and then gear it towards the good and the better. I think it comes down to, and this is one of the things that I do one of my talks on, is I get into the level of intent. What's the intent of the individual that's in charge? And what I have seen consistently, and I've worked in school systems, I've worked in the university level, I've been self-employed and worked with other individuals, and it seems to be pretty consistent across the board. When somebody that has been put in a position or given a title that is supposed to have leadership tied to it, the minute that they start, their intent starts becoming self-centered rather than what's best for the team, the organization, the mission at hand, that's when that toxicity starts to come out. And they start transitioning from, not necessarily from a leader now they're transitioning into that manager role, because it's all about them at that point.
Very, very interesting.
Demonize the managers completely, like selfish. Yes, yeah. But that's very, very interesting point of view. Thank you so much, Kian.
I think I agree in essence with what Davis is saying. I think it's almost a little bit too sweeping, though, to say a manager is just a doer, and you have your leader. One of the things I like to see is a leader that sees the potential in a manager and nurtures them to be able to grow if they are going to be capable of being leaders themselves. And that's not the case for all managers, but some managers, they have the capability and the skill set, and they do need to be nurtured and brought up. So you can't just make the assumption that they're to do. There needs to be some mechanism for bringing them on. But ultimately, the leader's the visionary. The manager could be a visionary and being nurtured into that role. That's maybe how I would see it. Just taking it a little bit further.
I love it. Thanks so much, Chris.
Yeah, I'm just saying, and I have another call at 4, but I want to make it brief, and I could always come back on right after that call. If we're going to keep going, I love this conversation. I would say, just to date what Davis was saying earlier, with influence can either be good or not good. It's like growing up in our homes. We picked up good things, what we observed in our parents, and not so good things. And those are things that shaped us to be who we are. And, and so now it's, we don't realize that sometimes that also works when we're working with people. We're working with people a lot of times like 8, 9, 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And people, whether if they know it or not, they're observing what you're doing, whether if they know that consciously or not. So if we're mindful of being an example through, again, our communication, assertiveness, behavior assertiveness, happening for you, not to you, attitude, responding versus reacting with situations and other people, and our level of action, being laser focused and not busy and not productive, those things can rub off on people in a good way through your example, especially when it's consistent. And when you're resourceful by influencing them to take, not that I'm going to just do it for you, I'm going to, give you something that can help you to help yourself. That like uplifts people. Maybe there's some resistance in the beginning because people like things to be done for them. But now when they do it for themselves, it's like, hey, I did this. They feel good. They feel like I've learned something, and they feel more psychologically safe now to open up what they don't understand now versus being shut down. And for me, that's just more uplifting, and that level of influence can be quite beneficial.
I love that, Chris, because that's taking the manager to a leadership level with the team below them. That's fantastic.
And I think there's a little bit of a difference too. You want them to both be the same, but there's a difference between somebody that is a leader within an organization versus a title holder, because there are people that hold titles, but they're not necessarily leaders. And you have people that are leaders within organizations, but they don't necessarily hold titles. And you always hope that somebody further up the chain recognizes that leadership ability and that ability to be able to have an influence within the organization, and then move them up into a title holding position, to where you have that leadership tied to that position. Because and I've, like we said, it's both good and bad. I have seen people that have leadership skills, but they have used it to completely disrupt and divide an entire organization and tear it apart. And they had no position or authority tied to what they did, but because they had that level of influence and could lead people, if that was their goal, they accomplished it, because I saw it just completely tear an organization apart.
But then at the same time, you have managers who are promoted to leadership roles because they've been in that business for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and it was time-based. But actually, they were a really good manager, but they're not a good leader, and they shouldn't have had that elevated role.
Yeah.
But it was time-based. I struggle with that one.
Mm-hmm.
For me, thank you so much for answering this question, because it's so important to distinguish in between those two. And now, to me, those are two different positions and skill sets, where the leader is, Chris will be back, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Where the leader is the one that has a skill set, where the manager, it's like almost like predefined position, executor, right? The leader will be the one to ask what, why, set the visionary, like we talk about. Now, manager will be implementing the systems, the processes, impacting people also. And like we said, the manager can be a great leader, doesn't need to be, right? A leader, it's something, it's not a position, it's not a title holder. It could be attached to it, like David said. But what visionary does, visionary will always, I heard a good metaphor about that the manager will know where to put the ladder and how to climb, but the leader will know against which wall the ladder should be placed. So it's just so different in my mind, because like Davis also mentioned, leader to me works in a way of impacting on creating that desire in people to become better leaders and have a top performance. Manager has a different role, and that's the difference to me. There's nothing good, bad. They both highly needed, because they just implement totally different skill set and totally different roles within a company or a business.
I think I alluded to this in our first in the first episode when we were together. To me, a leader has the ability to be able to see the potential in people and then develop that potentiality into something greater, and not feel threatened that somebody is growing and getting better, because that's what we should be doing as leaders within an organization. When to share for people that may not have heard it, when I was coaching high school football, I would meet with these college recruiters and ask them, what is it that you're looking for? I mean, because there's always that eye test. They have to look a certain way, have a certain build. Those are the things that they're looking for. But the thing that stood out is that they're looking at what the potential of that player is. What can they take that player and develop them into? And it completely changed the way I looked at my athletes. And then as I started owning businesses and doing those things, looking at people, running teams, coaching teams, looking at and see what are the strengths of each of these individuals, and how can we take that and continue to grow and develop it and make them stronger. And to me, that's one of the true hallmarks of a leader, and especially that aspect of not being threatened by it. I've seen so many people that have been put in positions of authority, and they're so guarded that they won't elevate anybody else. It's a conscious effort of tearing other people down to elevate themselves, almost in a narcissistic type, tornado that they create, and then wonder why everything around them is chaos and they can't trust anybody. When they did it to themselves,
Yeah.
Well, it's making, what type of decisions are we making? Are we making decisions that impact only us, or we are true leaders? So we want to make decisions that will be in the best and the highest interest of the company and the business and the people, teams, that are everyone involved, right? So making decisions from scarcity mentality, or making decision also from the famous word right now, abundance, right? So the more people I will elevate, the more people I will develop into amazing leaders, the better the company will exist, right? And has to be free from full need of full control, or having full control, right? What that's my next question, actually, going even deeper between the leader and the manager. How do you guys see how control supposed to even look like when we talk about those two positions or skill sets?
Define what you mean by control, because to me that has multiple meanings.
Okay, so we can say that leader will empower others, right? To motivate them to do certain things that he sees appropriate. It's a form of control as well. Manager can just tell them, I hold the higher title, so within my responsibilities is to make the team the best in, or the high performance in sales or anything like that. So he needs to make sure, because he's responsible, towards the business owners, let's say, that he needs to make sure that they're performing on the top high skills in whatever the team does, right? So that also will have to exude certain level of control that he has or doesn't have. It will show in the results that they can show after. Is that more clear?
Well, I think from my perspective, the word results there is the crucial one. And the way that I would approach this, being I'm a numbers guy, I do business by numbers, is that the control is parameters. The parameters are metrics, the KPIs. And so those for the manager are going to be different for the leader. But the control there is setting the targets, it's setting the parameters to the tramlines of which you're expecting the manager to operate within or to exceed. Yeah. And then there's similar then for the leader, but at a different level and different aspects of metrics and KPIs, dashboard driven, essentially. That's how I see it. But Davis has got a look on his face that he may disagree.
No, I don't. I completely agree with you. I mean, you're using the word parameters. I'm thinking borders, boundaries. But we're saying the same thing. It's all within. It's all within the boundaries that you set. Because in my thought process, to a certain degree, control is a negative word. And the reason that I perceive it that way is because. And again, it's shaped by things that I've observed and seen and how that term has been used. There's a control of information, trying to control people, that it turns into micromanagement. And so when I think of control, that's what I think of. Somebody trying to control their employees and what they do and every aspect of it. And instead of a leader keeping the bigger picture and seeing how all the pieces fit together, they start getting in and micromanaging everybody's job within it, instead of saying, okay, these are the boundaries I need to step into. Okay, let's tweak this a little bit, come back, work that a little bit more and bring it back. And allowing people to be able to freely work and be innovative in what it is that they're doing to get the job accomplished, versus trying to control every aspect. In control, I've even seen it to the extent where you have people taking high-level professionals and treating them as if they were, elementary school kids. And that just creates a toxic environment, and then wonder why nobody's happy and they can't keep anybody employed. So that's why I asked you to clarify what it was that you meant by control, because that's what I think of when I think of control.
I'm glad that you asked me. Yeah, I'm glad that you asked me, because I use this word for a reason. It's very triggering. It can be very triggering, right? Especially triggering negatively. But it's also a part of all the equation, right? Until a certain extent, like Kian mentioned, KPIs, knowing the boundaries, knowing what we can control, what we can't, and what not. Everyone is using it, but when it's becoming overused, it can become toxic. So that's why when people hear control in any form, they already get an allergic, reaction or being triggered, like you guys, immediately, because, but it is a part of what we have to deal with, and many times as leaders too, right? So that's why it's so important. Let's say it's very important part in conflict management, and it is a part of being a great leader, right? And the thing is that no one will teach the leader how to handle, what is the best way to handle conflict management, right? But it will be a part of his palette of skills with time. So I'm glad. I wish Chris is on the call still, so I would love to hear.
It's interesting. Titus, I think, is also culture. And actually setting the right culture so that it's a culture of thriving. And so from my perspective, even with the numbers perspective, what the metrics and KPIs aren't to do is to basically be targets that you beat your staff with. There's to be targets that to encourage them to thrive, to grow, to recognize accomplishment. And so the culture side of all of this, which is an aspect we haven't really touched on, is so important, so that actually leaders embed a culture that is almost joyful. It is, you mentioned that word a moment ago about abundance, but it is going, we want to achieve, we want this to flourish. We're setting these things because we want to be striving for more, rather than putting a negative connotation on it all,
I think what I think of too is, from the aspect that Asha is referring to, I almost go back, to the old 1980s movies where you had people in outer space and they're communicating back Houston, and you've got this, they call it central control. You have all these people that are there that are, receiving information in different pieces and looking at different aspects of what's going on. And then you have the people that are in charge that have to take all of those different elements and then make decisions on what needs to be adjusted and what needs to be addressed and problem solve over here. So from the context of what Asha is describing, that's kind of what I think of, where that's concerned. Of course, I had to default back to a 1980s movie to think about that, but.
Yeah, you know what? I think if we can look at control a little bit different, I look at this as the highest privilege of the leader to have, because having any form of control in any way, it requires such a great wisdom, knowledge, and really a clear vision. Where do we going and how do we going there? So it is the highest level of skills as a leader for me. Not only there, right? But it's overused everywhere, and that's why it just got the negative connotation.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. So vision and mission will be one of the first aspects that I want to cover when I start working with a client, for example, because if we don't understand that, we're not going to be able to do anything else really. So it's one of the first things I ask during my discovery process, and then it needs to be defined very quickly because everyone needs to know what earth we're working towards.
So let's get into my last big question that I ask is what's your approaches to problem solving? And I know it's kind of a general term because there's so many different categories and aspects that could apply to. But I want you to speak off the top of your head of what comes to mind when you think about problem solving, and how do you approach that?
I'm going to let ladies go first.
I knew it. Well, it comes back to me problem solving, right? Who has this problem? Who has this issue? Let's say a company, right? So it's so important to me to hear from everyone involved. And there's no just one obvious and right answer to any problem solving. How I like to do it with my clients, or how I advise them to do it too. It's how about doing a workshop about that? Let's say we have an issue, challenge that we are facing, and whomever from the company or from the business or from the family even is involved or will be involved in implementing it, has a right, it's invited to share their ideas, their concerns, but also the ways how they think will be the right solution, right? So we basically workshop it, in a sense, and we are able to pick the right priorities, pick the right challenges, because sometimes the challenges that we think exist are not the reason we need to focus on. So hearing from all involved people that having them being heard and giving them the opportunity to also share their advice will get the buy-in when we talk about implementing and how we need to implement. Because it's so important when sometimes, let's say Davis or Kian will come up with something and will say, okay, it's a great idea. Let's really implement that. Davis or Kian will be the ones, okay, I am so excited about implementing it because guess what? That was their idea in the first place too. So, it's so important when we resolve anything to get the buy-in of everyone involved. And that's one of the best ways to get everyone on board and get the effective decision-making swift and successful, actually implement.
I like that. Stakeholder collaboration. Is how I would potentially, I'd summarize that. Highly powerful, very, very effective. I think from my perspective, Davis, I would also ask a question though, is actually right at the very beginning, what's the problem? Is it something that can just be dealt with by the senior management team? Is it literally a leadership issue that just needs to be resolved and a decision can be made because that's what the leaders are there for? And actually, at the end of the day, potentially, for those leaders, for that business owner, it's their business and they have the right to make that decision in the best interests of the company. And I think that maybe there's times that actually it would be good if a business owner or a business leader was decisive and could just make a decision and deal with a problem if they understand it fully. From my experience, there have been moments where, or many times in various businesses where there's a problem, it could have been dealt with very swiftly by an owner, a C-suite, someone, and they've chosen not to. They swept it under a carpet, they've ignored it, or they've gone out to a collaborative approach and then all hell's broken loose, and it's taken a long time then to rein it back in. But there are other times when, Asha, I totally agree with you. Stakeholder involvement and collaboration enables you to get to a point where everyone's voice is heard, and you can actually find a way forward that's really effective. And then the leaders and the leadership team, board, whatever, totally on board and go, fantastic.
Yeah. You brought a great point here, and that it really depends on how big and who is involved in this challenge, because I agree, many times effective decision making is the skill of a good leader that can take care of the situation in a swift way when it's possible, right? But then if they still have to get everyone else buy in to a certain point, that might a little, the house of the card from cards can basically blow in his face or her face. Yeah, so it really depends on the situation. But I love the first solution as well.
To me, it comes back to that. It depends. But everybody loves it. Yeah. But for me, it's identifying specifically what the problem is. What is that problem impacting or could impact? Because sometimes when a problem arises, you don't necessarily always know if there have been residuals that have happened as a result of that problem arising. So I have to look at it from that standpoint as well, as that, okay, what's been the ripple effect of that problem? Is it something that has caused, an issue within the team cohesion? And, what has it done to affect the overall operations that the team is supposed to be operating without? And depending on the severity of the issue, especially if it's a particular individual that did something or said something, or there was if we're looking at it from that aspect, I tend to take the approach of bring the team together. I address the issue as a team, not directed at the individual, but just say, okay, this is the problem that's existing. This is what we need to do to deal with this problem, and allow the team to kind of work itself out. And if the problem continues to persist, especially if it's a particular individual within the group, then it's time to call that individual in and say, okay, we got some things we need to deal with here. Here's your opportunity to now I'm having to call you in. So I always make sure that they know that there's different levels and stages that we're going to deal with problems. And you don't want me to get to the third level. Let's address it on the first one, and then because if you have to continue to escalate it, it's nobody wins in that situation.
Definitely. It's interesting, David, listening to you there. One of the reasons why I'm smiling is because I'm sure each of us can sit here and go, we're aware of those situations where the leader can see the problem in the team, and he's just hoping it will go away without them having to step in, because they're scared. They don't have the leadership capability. They don't have the skill set that understands how they could break this down and deal with it. And it just festers and it gets worse. And so they then leave it. It's not resolved. And there's an even bigger problem that has to be dealt with. The flip side is, it's funny. Yesterday, I was literally talking to a client who has a team, and the team isn't performing as well as it should be. And he's gone through the steps that you have literally just covered there, Davis. He's gone, okay, I need to talk to the team. They need to be aware. This is how I expect things to be done. Okay, give them a chance to sort it out. And he'll give them the chance. And then he'll pull one person to one side if he has to, But I love it. This is a guy that's not been running his own business for very long, but he wants to learn and grow and do the right thing. And I think it's just great to have seen him approach it in that kind of way. Hats off to him.
Yeah. One of the things that I've done when I take over groups or I take on teams, my first mission when I start taking that group on is identify who are your natural leaders within the group. And then once you get buy-in from those leaders, you can actually use that leadership within the group to address issues and problem solve before it ever gets to you. And I have done that, successfully, because and they know that if they can't resolve it within the team, if they can't learn to problem solve among themselves, because that's essentially what you're trying to do as a leader. You're trying to teach them how to problem solve and how to correct issues so that it doesn't become a big issue later. And if you can get the team to do that within themselves, a lot of times it takes a lot of pressure off the leader to have to deal with those things and put that energy and focus into the things that are necessary. In some of my teams, they know that if it has to get to me, then there's going to be some critical conversations that are had, and we're going to address it, and we're going to deal with it, and and it's not personal. It's not a hurt feelings thing. It's sometimes we'd always don't like to have a little bit of correction directed at us, but it happens.
In that situation, Davis, do you ever employ any of the tactics that you learned early in your career?
Yeah, usually. Depending on what the issue is, but I do take some of those approaches of I'll ask questions. I always start asking questions that I already know the answers to see what kind of responses I'm going to get, and then that will kind of dictate how the rest of that conversation is going to go. So, yeah. Chris, thanks for jumping back on with us.
Sorry about that. I originally thought we were on for an hour, and then I had other calls scheduled. So
it's always in the spirit of an hour, but
but we have the Asha effect.
Yeah. So we were on our last question is approach to what are as an A approach or types of approaches that you use directed towards problem solving.
Yeah, what approaches towards problem solving is, again, like going back to what I shared here. I always like to look at the situation, a problem, for what it is, not what we think it should be. We can look at it for what it is. We can now be more in that mindset to see the problem for what it is. This is the problem. What can we control? What we cannot control? And then, putting together, things that we can do as a team. What if there is a team involved, or if it's just you, things that, again, what we can do to solve it, and starting with one, measuring to see if what's working, and if it's not, do something else, type of thing. So I guess I don't have any other, like, I know there's other processes people use. I wouldn't say that I use any particular one. I would just say that I kind of approach it that way, and then look at it, based upon like whatever it is. If there's another process or method, then applying what might be best for that situation.
No.
It's not like I'm using the same process for every situation.
Mm-hmm.
One size fits all. I'm not a big believer in that.
No. Awesome. Well, as he alluded to, we've gone way over our hour, and but it's one of those things. We've got great conversations. There's great information coming out. The whole premise with this is to be able to share information that is going to help somebody else somewhere along the way. And when stuff is flowing, I hate to just shut it down. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming on. And what I want everybody to do is at this time, I've moved all of your contact information over into the comments section on the live feeds. And but each of you go around, share your final thoughts, and then how to best get in contact with you, and go from there. Asha, you're the co-host, so you go first.
Amazing. Again, thank you so much, Davis, for invitation to be your co-host. Thank you so much, Ian and Chris, for accepting my invitation to join today. It was absolute pleasure to have great conversation with you and learn from each other, because that's the whole point, like David said. And I would love everyone to connect with me at acceleratedprofitsmasters.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn too. So I'm looking forward to connecting one-on-one with you and have a great conversation. Thanks so much again.
Yeah, well, again, my name is Chris Salem, business acceleration strategist and a professional speaker. It has been a pleasure to be part of this group. Asha, thank you for connecting me here with everybody, the chance to meet Dr. Davis and Keon here. This has been a great group. I've enjoyed it. And again, I would encourage anybody listening that, any questions that or anything that was shared that really stood out for you, get some more information, gather more due diligence, reach out to everybody here, reach out to Dr. Davis, reach out to Keon, reach out to Asha or myself, and, the more information that we can gather and then be able to see what resonates with us, what's going to help you to now move forward and whatever that may be. So take advantage of these types of platforms that you're getting a lot of great information, and now you get to decide what to do with it.
It's great. Ian?
Superb. Asha, thank you so much for inviting me as a guest. Doc, thank you very much for having me back on your show again. I appreciate it very much. I love these kind of conversations because I like learning. And I would really encourage anyone who's listening to this, who's listened to it after the event, even in the little clips, just to continue to be prepared to have open ears to keep on learning and growing. And that will make you grow from a good leader to an even better leader, and to be even better in your businesses. So thank you. Really appreciate this opportunity. If anybody would like to be able to get in contact with me, I am also active on LinkedIn. Go search for Keon Frith. I don't think there's any other Keon Friths there. And so you'll see this bald, bearded, or partially bearded guy there on LinkedIn. Really welcome to connect with me. And you can also find me on our website, www.kvimpact.com.
Awesome. And I am Dr. Davis Mankowska. Thank you all for tuning in. I would like to thank all of my guests and the co-hosts that have come on today. Thank you for coming in and sharing your knowledge and wisdom and experience, and allowing us to be able to know what it is that you do and how you can help others out there be able to continue to grow in their business and find success. So with that, we will wrap up. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Approach. Please hit that like button and subscribe for the latest episodes. If you would like to be a guest or would like for Dr. McAllister to speak at your business or event, you can email him at info@drdavismcallister.com. You can also go to his website at drdavismcallister.com.